In this video, we're going to be doing another Scrapy project. We're going to be scraping the entire contents of a specific collection of products on a store and downloading it and saving it either to JSON or CSV file. Scrapy is the Python framework for web scraping. It's really cool, it's really powerful, and this is a HTML site. So let's get going. The first thing we want to do is create a folder for our project. I've got one here. I am using the Windows terminal with the subsystem for Linux. But this would work on the PowerShell or whatever. I'd highly recommend though that if you don't already, that you get the WSL and you learn to use a little bit of Linux. It'll make your life easier. So first thing we want to do is we always want to use a virtual environment for Scrapy projects or any projects like this. So I'm going to do Python 3-m venv. It's up to you how you want to create your virtual environments. I just use this way. I like this way. So once this is done, we can then go ahead and pip install Scrapy. So this is done. Now we can activate it with source venv bin and activate. This is slightly different on Windows, but again, I'm going to leave the virtual environment up to you. So now what we want to do is, now that we're inside our virtual environment, we want to pip install Scrapy. I'm using pip 3. It could just be pip for you. We're going to do that and we're going to let this install, and then I'll show you where we are after that. So now that Scrapy has installed, we can go ahead and create our project. So to do that, we want to type Scrapy and start project, and then the name of our project. I'm just going to call this one Whiskey Scraper, like that. What that's going to do is it's going to set up all of the project files for us. It's going to create all of the configuration files, etc., etc. So if I go into my if I now go into the project folder that we just created and type the tree, we can see the way that the folders are set out with all the files. So basically we've got our specific project folder here and all of the things in it, and we can see that there's a spiders folder, and that's what we're going to be using. So we're going to be using a spider to crawl websites. So what we want to do now is we want to take a look at the website. It's this one here that sells whiskey, and I'm in the Scotch whiskey section. I'm actually just going to go over here and tick hide out of stock items, and I think that's going to give us 746 results. So what we're going to do with this scraper is we're going to go through each and every page, and we're going to get the name and the price and the link. So I'm just going to copy the link to this right here, and what we're going to do now is we're going to use the Scrapy Shell. Now that's going to let us download the page and then interrogate it so we know what commands we want to do for our Scrapy script. So I just type Scrapy Shell, hit enter, let that load up, and we can use the fetch command. So we're going to do fetch, and then we're going to put our URL in here that we just copied and hit enter, and hopefully somewhere down here we can see it says crawled, and we get a 200 response, which means that it's all worked. If you're getting a different response like a 400 or something, the website's not working. So go ahead and try load it on your browser and just check that the URL is working and everything's right. So when you're using the Scrapy Shell, everything is saved in the response variable. So if I go ahead and type response, it's going to come up and it's going to tell us that we have the response to this page. Now we can use XPath or the CSS selectors to get the information from this page. I'm going to use the latter. So I'm going to go back to the website, and I'm just going to go to our favorite inspect element tool. Let's make this big so everyone can see. Make that over there. And I'm going to use the selector, and I'm just going to quickly hover over hopefully the whole portion of the product. There we go, the whole thing's gone blue. And we can see on the the right hand side of the screen, that we can see all of these, the list class of the item. So that's the HTML code. What we can do is we want to have a quick look through this and see where the information is. And we can decide whether we want to go directly to the main list item, or we want to try and get the one underneath that might be easier. In this case, I'm going to use this div class item product. Sorry, this div class here, the product item info. I'm just going to double check that that's on the next one as well. There it is. So that seems to hold all the information for that product. So I'm going to copy that, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to our shell here, and I'm going to type response.css, and then I'm going to say div dot and paste the class and hit enter. Now we can see all of this information has come up on the screen, and that is because it has found all the elements that match that. So what we can do is we can actually do .get, and .get will basically just get us the first response, and get all will return us a list. But to demonstrate this first, I'm going to use .get. And we can see this has returned the HTML code for the first item in that list. We can see that we got the name here somewhere, the images, etc., etc. So this is the information that we want to try and get out. So we want to basically hone in and get just the bits that we want, the name, etc., etc., and the price. And we can see there's the price right there. What we can do is we can basically save this response item into a variable and then loop through it like we would do normally. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit back up and I'm going to remove the get, and I'm going to say our products is equal to that. So that's going to keep all of those in that list for us. So if I do length of products, we should get the same amount of products that is on the page. There's 100. So I'm going to suggest that there's probably 100 items per page, and it is exactly that. You can just see that here. So you can see how we're using the Scrapy shell to interrogate the HTML. So this is kind of like parsing it. So this would be akin to using Beautiful Soup to search through the HTML code. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to our shell and we're going to have a look inside the product. So I'm going to do products.css to search within that, and I'm going to find where's the name of the product. So here we can see the name is in this A tag with this class here. So I'm going to copy the class to the A tag. I'm going to come back here, I'm going to do a dot and then the class there. Sometimes the classes have a space. If they do, try putting a dot in the middle. That often works for you. We're going to close our bracket off like this, and then we're going to do dot get to get the first element. So we can see right away that this is the actual A tag element that we were looking at right here. So this one here, we've just sort of we've dialed in and we've got it there. But we want to get the text from this element. So after the class name here, we put 2 colons and then the word text, and with our .get, it will return us the text of that object. Well, what we can do is we can actually hit get all on this as well, and that will go through every single one and get all of the names of the products. And we can see that that has returned us a list of 100 product names, all from the first page of this site. So we can see how it starts to all come together. So I'm just going to clear this up, and what we're going to do is we're going to get the price as well, and we're going to check that we can get that out. If I hover over it here, we can see that we have a span class of price. So I can do copy that, come back here, and it was, we on products.css, and it was a span price, and I want the text of this element, and I want to get, because I'm going to get the first one in this case, and we can see it's popped up right there, .2495. Now I'm just going to quickly clean this up a little bit just so I can show you. Scrapy has ways that you can do this, but I'm just going to use .replace because this is a simple example, and we're going to replace the pound sign with nothing, because if we want to export it to CSV, it will get in our way. And there we go, that's it there. And the final one was the link, which was actually in the same A tag that we were looking at earlier here. So we can go back and let's go up a couple of times, and that was our A tag here. But instead of doing .text like this, we want to do .attrib and then href like that, because we want the href and we want to get rid of the .get. And that gives us the link there. Now the link is a full link on the website, which helps us. And what we could do is that if we wanted to get information from inside that link, we could basically store all the links, and then Scrapy will go through each one for us. But we're not going to do that in this case. We're just going to get the names of the products and the prices and the links from every page on the website. So we've got 746 items, so that's 7 or 8 pages. So now we've got to the point where we've managed to work out where our data is on the page and we know how to access it. The next thing that we want to do is we actually want to start assembling our Spider py file. Now to do that, we need to do a few things because we need to obey the Scrapy commands. So I've opened up VS Code in our project folder, and we can see here that here's the spiders folder on the left hand side, and we want to create a new spider to be able to crawl this page. So I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call it whiskeyspider.py for a py file. And then I'm going to collapse that down, and we can start writing our Scrapy script. So the first thing that we need to do is import Scrapy like this, and then we need to create a class of a spider. Now when we create a new instance of this class, we're going to give it a name, etc., etc., and it all has to be from the inherit from the spider class. So let's call ours whiskey spider, and we need to make sure it is a scrapy.spider because that's where we're taking the information from. Now every spider needs to have a name, so I'm going to call mine whiskey, and then we're going to have some start URLs. Now this is a list, but I'm just going to put one in here, and I'm going to grab our URL there. I'm going to paste it in. So what we're basically saying is these are the URLs that we're going to start scraping. So within Scrapy, you need to have some functions that let you do certain things. Now the main one that we're going to be using is the parse function. This is basically the same as if you've ever watched any of my other videos. I do 3 functions for basic web scraper: extract, transform, and load, or request, parse, and output. Basically the same thing. So this one is going to be parse. So we want to do define, and we're going to call it parse. And we have to have self because it is within itself. It's the function within this class. And we're going to be using the response. Now the response is what we looked at in our shell earlier. So what we want to do is we want to start crafting our parsing based on our shell here. So what I've done is if we go back up, we have the products is equal to response.css. Now this is where all the information was. If you remember, we looked through this to get the name, price, and link. So I'm going to copy that. And what we're going to do is we're going to say for products in response.css and then our div. That means we're starting our basic loop here. What we're going to do is we want to yield our results from this. Now, most normal Python functions use return, but Scrapy uses yield. So this is what's going to come out of this. And what we're going to do is we can actually create a dictionary straight away here and return that each time we go through these products. So our first one, we're going to say name, and then the second piece of information we wanted was price. I'm just going to write these out first and then put the information in. And the third one was the link. So if you remember, we looked through the shell, and if I go down to this one here and hit enter, this one was the name. So we can just take this and copy it and put it into the name there. So for every run through each of the products within this CSS class here, we're going to get the name out, and the name is in here. So it's very similar to using Beautiful Soup to scrape. You basically say, this is where the information is, let's go get it for every single one. And again, the same with the price. I think that was here, yes, where I had the replace. This is the price, and we can keep the replace in as well. So I'm going to copy that, and we're going to put that in there. And then with the link to, with our attrib href, that's the full link. So I'm going to copy that. And then let's put that one in here. So it's important that you keep the .get and you keep the text if that's what you want. And we've put a replace on the end of this one just to make it a bit tidier. So as it stands, this is a really basic version of a Scrapy web spider that will scrape information for us. Now we can actually run this, and this will output some information for us. We haven't put the pagination in yet. We're going to do that in just a minute, but I'll show you how to run them anyway. So I've exited the shell and I've come back to our project folder. We need to be in the main part of the project folder where we've got all this information. And to run the spider, we do Scrapy crawl, and then the spider name, which was whiskey. We hit enter, and it's going to go out and it's going to scrape all the information from the pages that we gave it and the information we gave it. So we can see here that if we look through this information, we actually hit a problem. We can see that it's starting to come back. See, if you look at this line, it's returned this, which is what we wanted, and it got so far, and then we have an error, and it's saying that it can't basically do it. So I'm going to hedge my bets and say that we've come across a product that's probably out of stock and we can't get the price information for it or something similar to that. So we just need to check here. So I'm going to copy the name of this first product, this last one on the list. If we go back to our page, we don't need you anymore. F, let's find it. Not on there. There we go. Okay, so the next one is sold out. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to try to work around that a little bit. So I'm going to put a try and accept in here. So I'm just going to say try this, and if that doesn't work, accept. We're going to do the same thing, except the price will have as just the text of sold out. Now this isn't a perfect solution and there are better ways around this, but for this basic example we're just going to do this instead. So I'm going to come back here, let's clear that up and run it again. But this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to do -O for output, and I'm going to say let's export it to a JSON file, and I'm going to say whiskey.json. So it's going to go and do all the same thing again, get the information, and it's going to save it all to a JSON file. So the cool thing about Scrapy is that you can run it like this. You don't have to basically write your own output. It's all built in for you. That's the benefits of the framework. So we can actually see all the output information here, and we have somewhere around item scrape count is 100, which is exactly what we were expecting. So if we come over to VS Code, we have a file here which I spelled incorrectly, obviously, and this has our JSON information, and there is 100 products there with the information out. So now that I know that this works, we want to go ahead and do the same but for all of the pages. Now the best way to do that with Scrapy is to look for the next page button. If it exists, go to it and run the thing again. Now that's nice and easy to do. I've done that in my non-Scrapy web scrapers as well. This is nice and easy. So what we want to do is inside our parse function, and at the bottom we want to say next page is equal to, and we need to go and find where the next page actual item is. So let's go down to inspect element again, all the way to the bottom of the page, and we are looking for this next page button here. We can see in this case it's making it nice and easy for us because it has the next and also the link available. So that means that this will work really well for us. So I'm going to copy the class. So I'm just going to come back to the shell, and I'll show you how to find that information so we can just verify that we are in the right place and not getting the wrong bit of information when we try and run our scraper. So I'm just going to do fetch again for our URL. That's going to run, and we can see we get 200. So now I'm going to do response.css just like before, and we're going to find, we are looking for an A tag with a class of action next. Now we can see that this has a space in it. So if I was to try and run this now, we would get nothing back. But as I said earlier, what we can do is we can put a dot in between to close the space up, and we can see that we've returned some information. So now I'm just going to do .get, and we can see that this looks like it is the next page. So the first one that returns is the one that we want, so that's good. But we don't want to get the text from it, we want to get the href or the link, and we can do that the same way we did before, and we can ask for the href. If I hit enter, that returns us the link. So that means we can use that link to then go to the next page and scrape that, and so on. This website is structured really well for this. It's not always going to be this simple, but this is a really good example. So we're going to say next page is equal to the response that we just found on in our shell. So what we want to do is we want to say is if this doesn't exist. So if next page is not none. So what we're saying here is that we're going to look for this information and we're going to store it in this next page variable, and if it is not none, so if there is something within it, we're going to say yield, and we want to do response.follow. So that's going to go to this link, next page. So we're basically saying if it's there, let's go to it. And we also want to do a callback. Now that means that we can then say go back to our parser and get that information. So we can just do callback is equal to self.parse. So let's just quickly look at this again. So we basically found the element where the link to the next page was. We're storing it in our next page, and we're saying that if that is not none, we want to follow that link, response.follow, and then we're going to go back with the callback to self.parse, which is right here, this function again. So it will run this again, this function. So we're going to get all the data again, and then we're going to come back down to here again and get the next page, and it's going to go through just like that. So that's it basically. So that's 25 lines, not even completely, of code of our very basic Scrapy web spider. This has been a nice and easy HTML website to work with. Obviously Scrapy has so much more functionality than this, which I will get into as we go forward. There's some really cool stuff in here. So let's just run our spider and get all of our information. So we're going to come out of the shell. Let's come out of that. Check that we're in the right folder. We are. So to run it, we want to do Scrapy crawl again, and then the name of our spider, which I said was whiskey, and then I'm going to output it again to whiskey.json. Now, if you do a capital O, it will overwrite the file completely, but if you do a lowercase o, it will actually append it to your file. So you could start collecting a load of data all in one file by outputting all of your spider information to that one file. So if you had multiple spiders that actually sent information in the same format, you could just put them all into one file, which might be quite useful. So I'm going to run that, and we're going to hopefully see a load of information flash by as we go through each and every single page and get the data. So we can see one lot come up there and another lot. This is each page flicking by, and it's getting all the data for us. So I reckon there are 7 or 8 pages, and we'll get the output of the at the end that will tell us how many results there were. I think it will also tell us how many pages there are as well. So here we go. We've got item scrape count 750. I thought it was 749, but doesn't matter. And we can see the finished region was finished, so that's good. It tells you how long it took, and it also says the request count made, and all other information. So another cool thing about Scrapy is that we can actually set it to delay by itself, and it will time the response request. So if you've seen maybe in your other web scrapers you have to put time.sleep in to slow your request down to the server, we can actually get Scrapy to manage that and monitor that for us by itself. So we could just put a delay in the global settings that will slow it right down, so we can actually leave it to run and manage itself if you like. So we'll have a quick look at the output, and I spelt it correctly this time, and we can see that we have 751 lines, including the first line, which has our bracket of all the information that we just found. And if you wanted to do to CSV, which you might find more useful, you do the same thing, but .to CSV. Both of those are built in. So that's it, guys. Hopefully you've enjoyed this one. I really enjoy using Scrapy. I think it's really powerful. It's definitely worth learning, in my opinion. There's so much you can do with it. Although if you don't really know much about web scraping to start with, you might struggle a bit more. There's a little bit more intermediate Python involved as well, understanding classes and sort of things like that. But it's definitely worth learning. Hopefully you've got something out of this one. It's given you some kind of value. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Like and subscribe. I've got loads of web scraping content on my channel already. There's more to come, along with more Python stuff. So stick around for that, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you. Goodbye.